Good evening, you're watching Mongolian World. I'm your host, Ulaanbaatar. And for top stories, special guidelines were issued for citizens traveling to China. UNICEF provides 2.9 billion MNT support to COVID response. And due to the level of noise, blood pressure of the citizens of Ulaanbaatar is increasing and hearing is deteriorating. And for the news, stay tuned. The Chinese government has made a decision to lift its travel restrictions imposed in connection with the COVID-19 pandemic. Thus, the Ulaanbaatar crossing point by road was reopened last Sunday on January 8th, and we saw the first flows of travelers between Mongolia and China. In a connection to this, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs issued a list of guidelines for people wanting to travel to China.
The guidelines include the following points. Passengers traveling to China should take a nucleic acid test within the last 48 hours before crossing any border point. Only passengers with negative PCR COVID-19 test result can travel to China. Passengers who wish to travel to China should fill out an exit-entry health declaration form of the People's Republic of China in English and in Chinese using the WeChat supporting program, China Customs app and web page says. The paper-based health declaration form could be filled out in Mongolian. There will be no mass nucleic acid testing after crossing the border point into China. Passengers with a valid Chinese health declaration form and no violation of cross-border quarantine requirements will be allowed to enter. The customs office will take a PCR COVID-19 test from passengers with unusual health conditions or high temperatures. Passengers with a positive test result can quarantine themselves at home or at place for self-treatment if they have no fundamental diseases and symptoms. If a passenger has a negative pre-departure test result, customs will let the passenger cross the border checkpoint. If a citizen of Mongolia who wishes to travel to China has an emergency issue related to health and other matters during or after crossing the border, they can get in touch with the Mongolian diplomatic missions abroad through emergency telephone numbers and email addresses. The renovated border checkpoint at Zamiot is now meeting international standards and was completed with funding of 30 billion Mongolian tugrix from the state budget and the Chinese government's non-refundable aid of 233 million Chinese yuan.
UNICEF Mongolia provided additional 2.9 billion MNT worth of support to the government of Mongolia as part of COVID-19 preparedness and response. The funding has been granted by the German government to Mongolia through UNICEF.
UNICEF Mongolia has procured essential health equipment, diverse equipment, and strengthened health professional capacities to be prepared for the next pandemic and further improve health sector response across the country. Since the pandemic, the total COVID-19 cases in Mongolia have reached over 1 million people, with 2,100 people dead as of January 5th of 2023. Even though the number of cases registered every day has decreased in the country, WHO and UNICEF advised to further strengthen the preparedness and response to COVID-19 and other diseases including influenza, which is circulating intensively in Mongolia. In 2022, UNICEF Mongolia provided a total of 6.4 billion Mongolian tugrix worth of supplies and technical support to health sector, which included fully equipped mobile clinics, medicine packages, and medical devices such as incubators, fetal monitor, resuscitation table, fetal Doppler, injection, and syringe pumps.
The level of noise of the city disturbs the peace, tranquility, and causes people to be stressed. Due to this, there are many risks such as insomnia and mental illness. Therefore, standards have been issued to reduce noise pollution. Noise pollution refers to noise produced by human activities. It is not immediately felt, but it has a very harmful effect on a person in the long run. It has been confirmed that there is too much noise in Ulaanbaatar city.
According to a study conducted in 2022, the average level of noise in Ulaanbaatar is 69.4 decibels. This means that is 9.4 decibels higher than the accepted standard level. It also has many negative effects on our health, such as headaches, fatigue, and weaknesses.
Medical experts determined that if the sound pressure level is greater than 67 decibels, blood pressure will increase, and if it's greater than 70 decibels, the auditory nerve will be negatively affected. Currently, Ulaanbaatar city is at about 70 decibels. It is clear that the citizens of the capital are living in a stressful environment. I live on the fourth floor of an apartment block. There is a lot of noise, and when the city was first built due to the wrong planning, cars parked outside start honking, fire trucks and police cars have to honk when they arrive. We live near UB Palace in Bengal district. Various racing cars drift there, and it's very noisy every evening. Sometimes the police don't know when it's happened late at night. The bedroom of the apartment family should not be next to elevator. However, there are cases where some poorly designed buildings are always noisy because on the other side of the wall is an elevator shaft. Also, the health of the residents is affected due to the fact that the apartment does not follow the basic standard of a 50 meters distance from the road and other buildings. There are standards and building codes approved by the state. They must be implemented, and the building company should be aware of those. However, this situation has arisen due to the mistakes in planning and/or in wrong planning. Noise pollution reduction standards will be updated in the first quarter of this year. In this way, a newly built apartment will follow the standard to create a more noise-free environment. Thank you for staying with us. Now let's take a look at the currency exchange rates provided by Mongol Bank. Here's the international news from our partner agencies. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday described his heartbreak after witnessing Pakistan's devastating flooding last summer and urged rich nations to help invest in rebuilding the country.
Guterres' comments came as part of his opening remarks at a conference being hosted by the United Nations aiming to help Pakistan cope with the fallout of the flooding that killed more than 1,700 people and displaced about 8 million. Pakistani Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif joined Guterres in person at the conference, while other world leaders, including French President Emmanuel Macron, took part virtually.
So my heart broke when I saw firsthand the utter devastation of last summer's floods. No country deserves to endure what happened to Pakistan. But it was especially bitter to watch that country's generous spirit being repaid with a climate disaster of monumental scale.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are at a turning point of history. Events are moving faster than we can imagine. And it is not only a question of how to survive, but it's a question how to maintain our bodies. It's a question how to maintain our dignity and honor by moving forward with a sense of purpose and a sense of achievement.
Countries were being asked to chip in to help Pakistan pull together an estimated $16.3 billion that's needed to help rebuild and recover from the disaster, blamed in part on the impact of climate change. Authorities in Pakistan hope about half of that funding need will come from the international community.
The magnitude of the damage Pakistan has suffered is monumental. While we remain steadfast in responding to the emergency needs of the affected population and the urgency of restoring their lives and livelihoods, we are according high priority to the resilient recovery and reconstruction of the affected infrastructure. The government of Pakistan has worked with international institutions, including the United Nations, the World Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the European Union, to prepare a comprehensive framework document on resilient recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction.
The conference has shaped up as a test case of just how much the rich world will pitch in to help developing world nations like Pakistan manage the impact of climatic swoons and brace for other disasters. Thousands of Pakistanis are still living in open areas in makeshift homes and tents near the stagnant water in southern Sindh and in some areas in southwestern Balochistan, the two worst flood-hit provinces in Pakistan. Organizers hope the conference will underpin a recovery and build resilience after the punishing floods between June and October, which also damaged 2 million houses and washed away 13,000 kilometers of roads. At one point, a third of the country was submerged. Pakistani authorities last week cited UN-backed assessment that the total damage amounted to more than $30 billion.
US President Joe Biden arrived in Mexico on Sunday, becoming the first US leader to visit its neighbor in nearly a decade. Biden was greeted at the Felipe Angeles International Airport by Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador and Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard.
The two presidents, along with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, will gather in Mexico City for a two-day summit that begins Monday. Immigration is among the items on the agenda. Among the other issues expected to be discussed are the climate, manufacturing, trade, the economy, and the potential global prowess of more collaborative North America. Early on Sunday, President Joe Biden walked the muddy stretch of the U.S.-Mexico border and inspected a busy port of entry on his first trip to the region after 2 years in office, a visit shadowed by the fraught politics of immigration as Republicans blame him for record numbers of migrants crossing into the country. At his first stop, the president observed as border officers in El Paso demonstrated how they search vehicles for drugs, money, and other contraband. The president spoke with border agents and observed demonstrations which included dogs aiding agents while searching vehicles. Biden's nearly 4-hour visit to El Paso was highly controlled. He encountered no migrants except when his motorcade drove alongside the border, and about a dozen were visible on the Ciudad Juarez side. His visit didn't include time at the Border Patrol station, where migrants who cross illegally are arrested and held before their release. He delivered no public remarks.
A Prague court on Monday acquitted former Prime Minister Andrej Babis of fraud charges of a $2 million case involving European Union subsidies. A prosecutor requested a 3-year suspended sentence and a fine of 10 million Czech koruna for the populist billionaire. The prosecution still can appeal.
Babis pleaded not guilty and repeatedly said the charges against him were politically motivated. He wasn't present at the Prague's municipal court on Monday. His former associate Jano Nagyova, who signed the subsidy request, was also acquitted. The ruling is a boost for Babis just days before the first round of the Czech presidential election. Babis is considered the front-runner in Friday's election, along with retired Army General Petr Pavel, former chairman of NATO's military committee, and former university rector Danusa Nerudova.
Now let's take a look at our regular feature on sports. Lionel Messi and Paris Saint-Germain will play a friendly against a select side made up of players from Cristiano Ronaldo's new club Al Nassr and their Saudi rivals Al Hilal in Riyadh on January 19th, the French champions announced on Monday. Qatar and PSG will travel to Doha on January 17th before moving on to the Saudi capital, which will see Messi and Ronaldo renew their rivalry. Messi returned to training with PSG last week after being given a fortnight off following Argentina's World Cup triumph in Qatar in December. Meanwhile, Ronaldo, who will turn 38 in February, recently joined Al Nassr after agreeing a contract that runs until 2025 and is reportedly worth more than 200 million euros. His arrival at Al Nassr, who are coached by Frenchman Rudy Garcia, comes as Saudi Arabia seeks to improve the profile of football in the country ahead of a possible joint bid to host the 2030 World Cup along with Greece and Egypt. Ronaldo and Messi have dominated the sport over the last 15 years, winning the Ballon d'Or 12 times between them. Their rivalry grew during 9 years in which they came up against each other in Spain when Messi was starring for Barcelona and Ronaldo for Real Madrid. Riyadh clubs Al Hilal and Al Nassr are Saudi Arabia's two most successful sides. PSG have made a habit of traveling to Qatar in winter since the Gulf state bought the club in 2011. However, this trip comes despite the Ligue 1 leaders having a French Cup tie schedule for the weekend of January 21st and 22nd against lower league opponents yet to be determined. Cool weather greeted runners on Sunday morning in Ho Chi Minh City for Southeast Asia's first major marathon of the year. More than 10,000 runners competed in the competition. This year's event had a total prize of over 700 million Vietnamese dong. Truong Le, a national elite runner representing Vietnam, won the men's marathon and Le finished the 32-kilometer race in 2 hours, 32 minutes and 40 seconds to claim the overall title. In the women's race, Southeast Asian Games bronze medalist Hua Tong Thi Nong finished in a time of 3 hours, 5 minutes and 43 seconds. The marathon was held in a Phu My Hong urban area with 10,000 local and foreign runners in 4 categories: 42 km, 21 km, 10 km and 5 km. A running competition for children was also launched with 500 children aged to 10 in the categories of 1.5 km and 500 meters. The Ho Chi Minh City Athletics Federation and Pulse Active, a sports tourism and lifestyle entertainment company, and the Department of Culture and Sports organized the marathon. It is one of Vietnam's largest marathons that had been held annually since 2013. This year's prizes total over 700 million Vietnamese dong. Here's the weather forecast of all major cities. Well, that's all for today and thank you for staying with us. We'll see you tomorrow with more news and updates. Until next time.